This is Daily Armenia, CivilNet's daily news digest. Here's what's making headlines in Armenia today. US Representatives Dina Titus and Gus Bilirakis introduced the Azerbaijan Sanctions Review Act of 2025 yesterday, a bill that would require the Trump administration to consider sanctions under the Global Magnitsky Act against senior Azerbaijani officials accused of war crimes, human rights abuses, and the unlawful detention of Armenian prisoners of war and civilians. It's time to impose costs on President Aliyev and his supporters instead of rewarding them with military support and investment deals, Titus said, citing the blockade of the Lachin corridor and the forced displacement of more than 100,000 Armenians from Karabakh. Bilirakis added, while the historic peace declaration announced last month between Azerbaijan and Armenia may signal progress, a political and humanitarian crisis continues, driven by Azerbaijan's ongoing aggression in the region. American tax dollars should not be used to support members of a brutal regime, he said. The bill directs the US president to determine within 180 days whether more than 50 Azerbaijani officials, including military commanders, prosecutors, judges, and those responsible for the detention of former leaders of Nagorno-Karabakh, meet the criteria for sanctions under the Magnitsky Act or the State Department Appropriations Law. The Global Magnitsky Act is a US law that allows the government to impose sanctions, including asset freezes and visa bans, on foreign officials involved in serious human rights abuses or large-scale corruption. It is named after Sergei Magnitsky, a Russian lawyer who uncovered a major tax fraud scheme involving high-ranking Russian officials and later died in a Moscow prison in 2009 after being denied medical care. Russian officials believed to be involved in Magnitsky's death were banned from entering the United States or using its banking system, and similar restrictions were later imposed by the European Union and other countries. The European Court of Human Rights ruled today that Armenia must pay hefty compensations to the families of victims killed during the March 1, 2008 post-election crackdown in Yerevan, finding that in most cases the state violated their right to life. The court ordered that each victim's relatives receive roughly $36,000 in moral damages and $42,000 in legal costs. In its unanimous decision, in the case Farmanyan and others versus Armenia, the ECHR also found Armenia guilty of failing to fully cooperate with the proceedings and stressed that the authorities had not properly investigated the killings. The protests began in February 2008 after Serge Sargsyan was declared winner of the presidential election, which many believed had been rigged. The outgoing president, Robert Kocharian, used force to suppress the demonstrations and hand power to his ally. On March 1st, riot police and army units were deployed in central Yerevan to disperse the demonstrations. 8 protesters were killed, some by firearms, others by hand grenades, and 2 police officers died from shrapnel wounds. Following the 2018 revolution, criminal charges were brought against Kocharian and senior military officials involved in the crackdown. The case was once closed but then resumed and remains under trial today. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, who led the 2008 protests and later served 18 months in prison, said today that the ECHR judgment confirms the obvious. He added that he hopes the ruling will give a new signal to Armenian law enforcement to conduct an effective trial and to ensure that none of the March 1st perpetrators escape accountability. And finally, the CivilNet number of the day is 14 million. That's the amount in euros the Netherlands has pledged to provide Armenia, or roughly $16,600,000. The assistance aims to support affordable housing for Armenian refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh, according to Dutch Foreign Minister David van Veil, who held a meeting with Ararat Mirzoyan, his Armenian counterpart, in The Hague yesterday. And as always, please follow CivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.